Was this episode 3 or 4?
Technically four, but I guess it'd be two of being live.
Yeah,
So
so we'll average it out and say episode 3. So episode 3 of the Merge MS podcast. Me and Chris here for Merge MS. We're just gonna be today. We're just giving y'all an update of the Mississippi legislative session. There's been a couple new bills that have been filed, a couple updates on bills that have already been filed. So we just want to talk about that. And then we're gonna some more deeper things, more in depth stuff with Mississippi politics, like some campaign finance stuff, and then also new fraud investigation, if you will, that was released by State Auditor Shad White. And then we're going to wrap up the evening touching on uh, national immigration policy and the even more crazy stuff that's been going on in Minneapolis. So, Chris, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Ready to get rolling again.
Awesome, awesome. I'm glad you could make it, man. I'm glad that we're able to come together and try to bring the news and try to bring some principled and faith fueled conversation to what's going on in this world. Like you said, we're here through the Merge MS podcast in association with CCMS and all the work that they're doing around the state and locally. We're coming to you from Jackson, Mississippi metro area. So um, we're super excited for tonight. Like you said, we're covering some stuff on the state level bills that, like you said, are kind of in the works and how things are moving along in this legislative session. And what we're trying to do, through this podcast and the conversations we're having is we're trying to put principles over party. We're trying to stay grounded in these discussions. We're trying to tie them to biblical truths, aside from the political trends that are going on. But we're trying to focus on simple, non-negotiable, the three pillars I think that we promised we would stand on: faith, family, and freedom. We believe these things are obviously rooted in Scripture. We think that they're the foundation of a thriving life, strong communities, and a freer Mississippi. So we'll jump into it on this show. Like you said, we are going to talk about these bills and just how they're intersecting from politics to the church to the state. Some of these conversations may get a little uncomfortable, but that's just kind of what we're here for, is to have those uncomfortable conversations from the school choice debacle that's going on in our state. It's obviously one of the bigger things we have going on. Some of the public corruption scandals that we've seen going on the national level, and how that's kind of tying back to Mississippi and what we've seen here in the past, but also what's kind of emerging more recently as well. What's affecting our families through some of this legislation, and also through that corruption and fraud that we're seeing. These are legislative fights. Legislative fights. These are national fights. These are um, things that we have to ask. What does the Bible say about these, and how
Mhm.
should believers respond to it? How do we live this out? How do we navigate this as citizens, both one day in heaven and in Mississippi? So again, our goal isn't just to inform, but it's to educate people, to equip people, encourage them, mobilize the next generation, because we want leaders. We want young leaders. We want high schoolers, college students, young parents, emerging voices in our community, in the state, to rise up and hold people accountable, to be bold, be courageous, servant leaders of the civic arena, as we should say. Um, not as trying to be culture warriors and keyboard warriors, and uh, but as faithful stewards, who fear God more than man and aren't afraid to have these conversations. People who love truth more than power, and are willing to defend the vulnerable. Like we said, in this divided world and these crazy times we're going through, there's a lot going on in the state. Like we said, a lot on the national level as well. So we'll get into it, man. We're gonna keep talking about school choice and what's going on in the state right now. There's not a ton that has emerged. We do know that this is a freedom to learn. It's a bold, bold move in Mississippi, and kind of what's going on with uh, the school choice bill, the huge 553-page bill that has come out. It just kind of aims to let public dollars follow students, wherever they want to go, whether it's private schools, homeschooling, other options via these education savings accounts. So it passed the House narrowly. The Senate stands pretty firm, I think, against the vouchers, is from what I'm hearing. So, but this still, it's an empowerment for families. And some people may argue, or is it a risk towards public education? So we'll break down some of the latest status and implications of it, and how it's just echoing biblical principles and parental authority, responsibility, and stewardship. Uh, towards what these bills are trying to achieve. Again, this is championed by House Speaker Jason White, co-sponsored by Mr. Owens. And, like I said, it's supposed to allow state funds to around $7,000 per student to follow the child through school tuition, homeschooling expenses, tutoring, or approved services. It's a phased rollout that's supposed to start pretty limited with around 12,500 accounts, which is going to increase over the years. So it's going to start out pretty small. It's not designed to hit every single student. Not everybody's going to be able to apply for it right then and there. Some people have had the argument that this is only for some people, so it's not. It's more government trying to welfare thing, if you will. I've heard that argument as well, because it's only targeting low income families, but it's going to prioritize those low to middle income families in some regard. But I think we can agree that, I mean, that's usually probably the ones that are looking for some kind of school choice change, or looking to move their kids
Hmm.
from an underperforming school for whatever reason. But there's also those that are, dealing with not just underperforming schools and their child falling behind, but also, we talked about this last time, bullying. Um, different reasons, and it really doesn't matter the reason. I mean, the point is, I think altogether, that it's supposed to help, uh, parents have more say so in what they're able to do with their kids' education.
Hmm.
Some of the other provisions in the bill are to ease public school district transfers. So it can expand charter schools, which include literacy enhancements. Excuse me. No broad teacher pay raise, but I think they did push for like a separate $2,000 pay raise. And then some received funds from private schools receiving funds that also face some testing, but not full public accountability standards. There's some people kind of pushing on that as well. In the legislative status, though, like I said, we saw that it advanced to the Education Committee on the 14th. After some heated debate, 17 Republicans voted no, obviously showing some internal division. Most of the leadership establishment, in the Republican Party, is for this. Uh, I think you mentioned this before we got on, that some of the Senate has pretty much said that, it's going to get watered down. If not, it's going
Yeah.
to die in committee. We're kind of seeing some early indications of what the Senate plans to do. The Senate already passed some separate bills focusing on public to public transfers, teacher pay raises, or retiree incentives, but the voucher support, I don't think, is there. So the bill's now in the Senate, or going to conference for potential amendments if necessary. But I think they are going to gut the voucher portion of it in the Senate. The House may use the teacher pay raise kind of as a bargaining chip. Governor Tate Reeves supports external pressure from business leaders has been there. Former governors, even the Trump administration,
Hmm.
endorsed this. The Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, um, and then the opponents, public school advocates, some Democrats. We'll talk about that in a second. We saw a bill that came out that was kind of we'll show you if you want, uh, school choice, what we can do. But they're citing some of the risk for this funding, and the accountability of it and the equity and just kind of what it stands for. I mean, have you heard anything else on this?
Not really, other than the education committee chairman. Um, saying that it's probably going to die in the Senate, and unless there's some significant amendments. I think Senator Hartness was commenting on that as well. Is that this bill in and of itself is not going to get passed through the Senate? There's going to be significant amendments, and I think that's expected. I think the House expected that. The House and Senate don't work well together at all. That's been a story old as time in Mississippi, at least since Delbert Husband and Jason White have been in there. So there's going to be some work to be done, but I think that in general, the idea of school choice will pass the Senate.
Think so too. And again, this is the whole point is to empower the parents to help choose this education. But you said it well. I mean, sometimes the House and Senate don't always work in tandem as they should, which I mean, I guess is a good thing. It's a bad thing because we do see that they each have their priorities. Obviously, they're trying to represent their constituents the best as they can. Um, like I said, critics are worried about the diverting funds from the public schools that are already strained. Some lacks of oversight in it. I think we are going to see it very much watered down. We've kind of heard that this is like 18 bills tied into one. So they are definitely going to water it down, if not strip a lot of things out. And I think you're going to see a much more narrow school choice bill come out if it does come out. Some of the compromise I think we're just seeing is the enhanced public transfers and targeting help with broad vouchers, maybe. So, I think what we can say about this and what we said in the past is just a connection to how school choice resonates with, some scriptural themes, if you will, parental authority, stewardship of your kids, parental responsibility, pursuit of truth and wisdom. um, Education should foster godliness and knowledge, justice and care for the vulnerable. For some of these students that aren't able to get the education or the resources that some of these failing school districts have, just simply are not providing. So, if low income families gain real options to escape failing schools, that promotes some equity and opportunity. But while government policy isn't the church's domain, biblical principles support parental primacy in education, I think, and
Mhm.
it's wise, if not accountable, um, a use of resources for the common good, which will kind of, I was reading something the other day about why school choice and kind of how private taxpayers, why it kind of matters to everyone. So there is a post I saw about a gentleman who was talking about how private school families in Mississippi are quietly subsidizing your public schools, keeping property taxes lower for everyone. One Madison County resident and parent had said he had paid over $144,000 in school taxes since 2008, while his kids attended public schools briefly and then private schools. His message was mainly that education freedom isn't anti-public schools; it's actually pro-family, it's pro-taxpayer, and pro-common good.
Mhm.
Um, so while we unpack it a little bit more, it's supposed to help every Mississippian, whether your kids are in public school, private school, homeschool, or yet to be born. If you have yet to have kids. So um, in Mississippi, property taxes fund schools, counties, and cities. And in Madison County, school districts get about 51% of those taxes. So
Mhm.
this guy was arguing again that he had paid over 140 grand in ad valorem taxes to Madison County School District since 2008, even after his kids were out of school. So he doesn't resent it. He values educated citizenry, and believes that strong public schools benefit the whole state. I think we had mentioned that last time. Like, look, we homeschool our kids, and we pay taxes into it, and it's used for public education. So it's obviously in support of school choice via education savings and things like that. But again, it's empowering these parents to choose the best fit for their children. serving families and taxpayers more effectively than a one size fits all system.
Mhm.
Um, the supporters of school choice obviously do not oppose public schools, and obviously are he was arguing that your tax payments and the tax dollars that you pay in kind of prove that. So interesting take there. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's interesting. You see these arguments a lot of times between like red and blue states. You know, sort of subsidizing things. But I mean, I feel like even though it's all of our tax dollars, I still feel like it's almost more freedom, and it makes more sense that our tax dollars go to people actually having a choice instead of just one size fits all, like you were saying. I think that's a lot more free, and it sort of makes sure that your tax dollars that you're paying is essentially given back to you so that you can spend it on your kids' education, to an extent. And I think the idea of that is very good.
Yeah, and I mean, even what's mentioned in here is that these homeschool families would also receive a little bit of funding that they're able to use towards curriculum,
Yeah.
supplies, and things like that. And I mean, I'm not complaining about that, but I also didn't complain when I wasn't, getting anything. Because I was thankful that we actually even had the choice to homeschool our kids, and we didn't need any government interference there. We're just kind of like, no, we'll just do this on our own. But the fact that hey, we are going to get some of that tax money back potentially. Certainly not complaining about that because there's no telling how much we've paid into taxes to help fund public schools, and all they're right. I don't complain about that. Like I said, we pay in taxes and we choose where we want to live in the cities and the communities that we want to live. And we're willing to make that investment because we're like, hey, we want to live here, so we're going to pay the taxes. So private school families already bear the full cost of tuition and pay the same property taxes as anyone else, effectively
Mhm.
subsidizing public schools by not using those services. Without private options, public schools would be overwhelmed, and everyone's taxes would probably rise to cover the gap. Another interesting thing that I was looking at earlier was some persistently dangerous schools in the country. So apparently, there's only like two states that were following this law to help ID dangerous schools in their state. So these are schools that have either had shootings, rapes, assaults, just bad things happening in these schools. And a lot of these states were not IDing these schools because if they would ID them, the federal law is actually requires them to provide public school choice for the students in those schools. So the more you and I was reading about this somewhere else too, the more these things aren't um, ID'd, it's like, well, if we ID these things and these that are happening in the schools and maybe potentially dangerous or bad, then obviously the schools gets kind of put on a radar, and it's like, well, you have to provide options. If public choice is not available, private choice has to be made by according to this federal law, and it has to be made available so that students have a safe learning environment alternative. And this is something that wasn't being enforced by the previous administration. So it's something that some groups are trying to push now to allow that. Because, I mean, let's face it, I mean, if we were you don't hear about it very much, but I mean, let's just take, some of these schools in Hines County, for example, that, where there's probably shootings, there's probably who knows what that happens, and none of it is actually discussed or talked about because then these schools have to be ID'd. Most of them would probably be shut down
Yeah.
if we knew what was actually going on in these schools, whether it's teachers that are hired that aren't doing the right thing, whether it's curriculums that are just completely out of whack, teaching crazy ideas, or like we said, just these bad things happening, whether it be stabbings or fights or
Mhm.
drugs in the schools, and not to mention just the overall failing of the schools. So other states, including all Mississippi border states, have proven that choice programs work without collapsing public education because it's obviously still working there. So I think Mississippi can too, but it's yet to be told. But again, why this is relevant to everyone in Mississippi is not just to private school families, but it's lower taxes for all private school families, tuition payments, reduce pressure on public school budgets, keeping property taxes lower than they otherwise would be. There's some capacity relief built into that. Competition drives improvement. We've discussed this. That choice kind of encourages schools to innovate and try to perform better, as seen in states with successful programs. Shared future. So, an educated, well equipped next generation benefits the entire state and the economy. So, why wouldn't we want these kids to have better opportunities to become uh, you know, productive citizens? It helps the economy, safety, workforce, the quality of life for their future. No matter where the kids attend school, I mean, the whole point is that they come out educated in some kind of way. So, and then taxpayer fairness. Everyone pays into the system. The choice ensures funds are used more efficiently, and it kind of gives families real options without punishing those who choose differently. So, tying it back, as a good stewardship of resources, care for the common good, parental responsibility, justice, and fairness. And I think avoiding unnecessary burdens when it comes to forcing all students into public schools would kind of burden the system and just kind of raise taxes on everyone. But
Hmm.
that choice kind of distributes the load a little bit more equally.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of some of the again pros and cons that we're seeing on both sides. Well, yeah, we're yet to see what's going to happen. I think it's going to be February, not March. Excuse me. I think maybe March 3rd, whenever they have to make a decision over there.
Hmm.
We talked about doing a town hall on February 19th or 16th, I believe, where we're going to try to get some some pro school choice people, some opposed school choice people. We're going to try to find some administrators. I've already reached out to some people, some legislators that have already agreed to come on, some parents on both sides, because there's so many questions out there. There's so many, well, this is why it's good, this is why it's bad. So we just really want to lay this out and have these people ask some good questions and try to get some plain facts and answers. Because with potentially 18 bills tied to one, a 550 30 page bill, you can't agree on everything in there.
Yeah.
And you also can't oppose everything, and then there's got to be some good for it. So um, like we were saying a second ago, one of the things that had come out of this was SB 1211 that had came out from a Mr. Bell over in Hines County, I believe, and it was kind of a, I like I said, I think it was kind of an attack or just kind of well, we'll show you um, bill on, kind of going after homeschooling families and showing how there are some possible attendance and funding and regulatory adjustments that could be put into place for this. Commissioner one of the front runners for Governor Andy Gibson came out and said, this is going to die like as soon as it hits committee.
Hmm.
This isn't going to happen because not only is it poorly written, but it's just also one of those things where it's an obvious and blatant, well, if you want school choice, then we're going to get the government involved even more and potentially have home visits to home schools to make sure. Look, I'll tell you from, just kind of being involved in that system already, it's hard for CPS in general to, um, come not because they're not trying to do their job, but I mean, it's the lack of funding, it's the lack of they have more important things to do than to be checking up on, homeschool families teaching their kids. They're trying to find placement for kids that are, going through bad things, kids that actually need homes, which
Right.
is what they should be doing is, getting with families that um need to be vetted, that need to be you know, making sure that their homes are suitable for actually, taking in kids. They need to be doing those important things. They don't need to be,
Yeah.
checking in to see what kind of curriculum that you're using. I mean, there's already some guidelines in place that we have to follow. You got to turn in, make sure that basically right now, I think it's just you have to say that your kid is doing some kind of curriculum and tell them what kind of
Hmm.
curriculum it is.
Yeah.
It's pretty plain and simple right now, but parents, it's obviously I think kind of a determinant saying, well, now I have to follow all these guidelines and prove that my kid's going to school 180 days, here at home. And, the point is like parents are going to say, well, I don't want to do that because then I have to keep up with more paperwork and I have to do all these other things when I'm trying to do this at home here on my own. But assuming that 1211 bill involves expanded state mandates in education, child welfare, and compulsory elements, it raises some concerns. As I think it's obviously an infringement on the parents' rights, an overreach kind of beyond the government role of what they should be doing, and then a violation of individual liberties as well. What do you think about that? I know we talked about that a
Yeah.
little bit.
I was homeschooled actually for a little bit between my eighth and ninth grade year, and just and I one thing I found is that if we just had a little bit of money or a little bit more help, that my curriculum would have been a lot better than it was because it was a pretty quick turnaround for us. And I don't understand why we would try to restrict homeschooling whenever that's you're right, it's individual liberties for families. If they want to homeschool their kids, they should have the right to do that, and the government should be encouraging that, not trying to stop it. um, so I think this is just I think it's really a middle finger to everyday families, and I really hope that it just dies on committee.
Yeah, I think Commissioner Andy Gibson was pretty confident when he said, you know what, this isn't going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Same thing with the Fair Chase Act. The obviously restriction on that was kind of targeting farmers and hunters. Um, that saying they had to have 2,000 acres to be able to hunt, and permits and more licenses to entrap or kill animals that were potentially hurting their livestock or they're damaging their property. Straight up overreach. I mean, plain and simple. Like I said, these are bills where somebody was up late at night and just decided, hey, this might be a good way to, like you said, show them the finger. But
Hmm.
I encourage these people that live in the districts of these guys to remember that next election cycle
Hmm.
and to get them out of there. If they proceed with this, I'm sure some of our organizations will have some part in finding some people to run against them and supporting those people because that's kind of what we're here for. We're gonna talk about this stuff and then kind of help equip and educate and mobilize people to act against that in the way that we should in engaging the system. And whether it's them running for office themselves, maybe there's a parent out there that's listening that's like, you know what, this is BS, I want to run for office. Hey, come holler at us. We will show you how. We will help you. We will um, could potentially help fund it. We are trying to get this stuff out there. So let's jump into the next thing. Some more bills that we are kind of seeing. SB 2259. We talked about this a little bit. I saw you had posted this in our group. Um, Opening the doors. So Mississippi's push for live stream public meetings and biblical transparency in government and what that means for how this all works together. So, in a move towards some greater government openness, some Mississippi senators are advancing a bill to require live streaming nearly all public meetings. So, state agencies, small town councils, what does this mean for accountability, citizen engagement, and then how does this, how does this call for living out truth and justice in public life? I think automatically, plain and simply, I mean, the first thing I thought of was, man, maybe these guys would think twice before running for office when they know that everything they're discussing and everything they're talking about uh, is potentially. Um, can you hear me? Are we cut out? think we lost Blake. Trying to get Blake on.